Hello, this is Mark Werawath. I wanted to share 10 things about EVs or electronic vehicles that people generally don't realize. And this, I think, might change your mind about EVs and whether or not you can afford them and whether or not they're really practical for day-to-day use. The first I'd like to share with you is that EV ownership and sales have been steadily growing since 2010. So you're seeing 8 years of progression here from a few thousand units per month, now pushing close to 27, maybe 28,000 units in a month. And that's across all vehicle makes. So that includes Tesla, that includes Chevy Bolt, that includes Nissan Leaf. All the pure battery electrics are shown on this chart. So you can see that there's been no retrenchment. It's a steady path upwards. So that's good news, I think, for the economy. That's good news for the environment. And that's good news for EV lovers everywhere. Okay, some things you probably don't know. First of all, EV range is now reaching more than 200 miles. It used to be 80 miles, which, frankly, if you're recharging every day, I think 200 miles may even cover a typical cab driver. So unless you're going cross-country, in which case you can do some high-speed charging, 200 miles is actually pretty impressive, right? EVs generally don't need any maintenance, and by that I mean oil changes, transmission fluid changes. There are no belts, there's no fans, there's no engine air filters to replace. There's no hoses. Generally it's there's no tune-ups required. These cars require virtually no maintenance. All you have to do is rotate the tires, replace the wiper blades. There is a cabin air filter, and I think that's basically it, right? Maybe washer fluid. So it's about as cheap as you can get, right? EVs are a lot of fun to drive, and that's possibly the only reason for some people that they buy them, because it's just infinite torque. You hit the gas pedal and the car just takes off. So it's so much fun that, frankly, we often fight about who's going to drive the EV in the household, and also I look forward to driving it virtually every day. So EVs operate at a cost that's less than 15% of the cost of internal combustion. So instead of 30 miles costing me $3 for a gallon of gas, I can get 30 miles on my EV for about 20 cents. So that's a significant savings. A lot of people don't know this, but used EVs are a super bargain. Go on CarMax, convince yourself one way or the other. But a used EV, look at Nissan Leaf. Look at a Nissan Leaf, maybe 3, 4, 5 years old. You will find that if it's under 50,000 miles, you can probably still get it for maybe 10,000 or higher. Over 50,000, you can get it for less than that. So we're talking a very low resale. So I guess that's a good thing if you're in the used car market. It's a bad thing if you plan to buy an EV and trade it in if you're buying it new. On the other hand, they're so cheap to operate that you could argue that it justifies the depreciation. There's another factor here, and this is true for most EVs, but they're still subject to the $7,500 rebate from the federal government. So that's great if you're buying a brand new one. It doesn't apply to anybody else. So, and it's also used as a credit against your taxes. You should check with your car dealer. You should also check with your accountant to see if you would be eligible. EVs are quiet and clean to operate. So when we sit in my EV, and if I don't have my radio on, it's almost like a Zen experience. It's like so quiet in there, you don't hear anything, which makes these loud motorcycles next to you pretty obnoxious. But this is also potentially a negative. If people don't hear you coming, they won't be looking for you. So you have to maybe beep the horn every once in a while. Okay, charging is probably the thing that most people ask me about. So I have 4 bullets here just on charging. So the first one is that EVs can be charged in local charging stations that are public, in parking garages, parking lots, and often I would say maybe 80% of the time they're free. So just check the rules. There's a network called ChargePoint that you should join if you're going to buy an EV. That would be the first thing to do after you pick up your EV, is join that network and then start charging in public locations. There are charging locations and stations all over many cities. I'll show you a map at the end. The U.S. probably has tens of thousands. I know Chicago, where I live, there's hundreds, and I'll show you a map of that pretty soon. You can also charge at home, of course. A 120-volt circuit in your garage will give you the ability to charge, but it's going to be slow. Some people put 240 volts in their garage, a separate circuit just for that. And that's what I did, so I can charge much faster. In hindsight, I probably didn't need to do that, but I did anyways because I wanted fast turnaround in case I needed to charge up my car. In hindsight, I probably wasted that money because it wasn't necessary. Pure EVs are in many cases very American. So the Teslas are made in California, the Chevy Bolts are made in Michigan. Even the batteries for the Bolts are assembled in Michigan. So almost all of these cars are assembled, and most of the components come from the United States. So they're very American. I know there are Chinese electrics coming in the future, but right now, most EVs that I've seen are made right here in America. So charging, there's 4 types of chargers that I show here. The first one on the far left is a typical home charger, level 1. So for a Nissan Leaf, it would probably take 12 hours to charge. That same Nissan Leaf could be charged in the second case here with a home charger that's 240 volts. This is what I installed in my house, or maybe not this brand, but a similar brand. And this would take less than half the time at 240 volts. That same 240 volts can be had on the street using something called the ChargePoint network. And that basically gives you 5 hours of charge time. That's from basically almost 0 to 100%. And that's for a Leaf. Different cars would have different charging times and different charging rates. This last example here is the 480 volt public charger. These are very rare. You're not going to find these too often. They're never free or hardly ever free. A level 3 charger can charge that same car in less than 2 hours, maybe even an hour and a half. So this is the kind of thing you would see on the tollway. This is the kind of thing you would see on a long-distance drive. This is what makes a long-distance drive possible, but your car needs to be outfitted with a level 3 quick charge connector. I promised you a map. This is a map of Chicago. These are the public chargers compatible with Nissan Leaf. You can see the various types of connectors over here. But the Leaf has a J1772 connector, and for DC fast charge, it has the CHAdeMO connector. So what you see here in green are the J1772. These are level 2. So this is the 240 volts. And the gold ones are the level 3, 480 volts. So you can see they're scattered all throughout the city of Chicago. If we zoomed in, you'd probably find a much denser cluster here under the Chicago city limits. I know the Park District, for example, has them, the forest reserves, the Botanic Gardens. There's also in museums. There's various charging locations throughout the city, so keep an eye out for that. I don't think there's anything to fear when it comes to charging, as long as you are a member of ChargePoint or some similar network, as long as you have the apps, and as long as you keep an eye on it, you should be fine. And with that, I guess I'll end the discussion. I guess the bottom line is, do not fear your electric vehicle. That's frankly what it's here for. So, thanks a lot.